What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. We got a KTM 505SX catastrophic failure. We're doing a rebuild on the motor. Case is split. This video is going to be a detailed video of how to break apart the motor, tear it all down, and put it all back together. I'm kind of excited about this. I took a 5-hour motor build and I broke it down into under 15 minutes. Yes, there's a lot of high speed, but you gotta do high speed when you're trying to cover 5 hours worth of motor build. So, with no further ado, we got the catastrophic failure. She ate a valve, destroyed the head. We had another head on the shelf. We had another top end on the shelf. Valve stem actually went through one of the titanium valves. It punched a hole in the piston. Yep, that slug actually comes out the motor later on when I get the cases all split. We got the motor out the bike, and we're going to get her on the shelf and start getting her all tore down. That is nasty catastrophic failure. Get a quick little peek of what was inside the motor. You can get back to this part of the video further on in. So don't be clicking away. You don't want to miss out on this build. There's all kinds of neat stuff in it, and we give you a good breakdown on how to take one of these apart, the order in what to take these things apart, because if you don't take certain parts out at certain times, you'll never get the cases split. So here we go. We're going to be getting into the actual disassembly of the motor. Start out with the clutch cover, of course. Easy stuff. Pull the filter. Look at all the aluminum in that thing. Zip out the lower cam gear cap. That little pin holds the lower gear that holds the timing chain. The timing chains on these things are gear to gear. They run off of a gear from the flywheel to a chain. The chain goes up to the head, and the cams are gear driven. So get the lower cam out, get the camera up in the little hole, see if we can see anything gnarly sitting in the inside. Kind of amazed at how this camera actually focused on inside of that. And we'll turn around and start ripping the clutch basket off this thing. You'll notice I stop and look at that spring. It was stuck. It didn't want to come out right away. Come to find out, the lock nut was, or the lock washer was not bent all the way over, and it was holding the spring. Looking through the clutch plates, none of them are burnt. Everything's good. Clutches on this thing are mint. Put the clutch back in, zip the inner bolt out, or nut off. Pull the whole basket assembly off. Make sure you get the bearing and stuff out. Put it all back together. Set it off to the side. These are your oil pump gears. You need to slide the little piece on the back side of the shift shaft back to get it to clear. Pull that secondary gear off. Crank nut. A couple of drive sprockets. Zip off the sprocket. Flywheel. Now you've got the drive gear and all of your starter gears with a one-way sprag clutch. You got to be careful with these. The bearings can fall out of them. Take them apart very carefully. Try and put it all back together. There's a big nut holding that last gear in place. So we will start taking the oil pump gears off. There's 3 oil pumps in this motor. There's 2 on this side, 1 on the other side. Take the first cover off. There's a pin holding it in place. Take the pin out. Take the second cover off. Pull the second oil pump drive out. Outer drive. Pull the pin. This is the cover for the other oil pump drive. Pull the whole shaft and everything out. Shift detent. Hold the crank. Get on there with a big socket. Get their last gears off. That side's clear. Got all the case screws. Put a couple of screws back in, whack them with a hammer, split the cases. Do it with 2 strokes, do it with 4 strokes. Works every time. Been doing it 35 years this way. Now for all the fun stuff. Look at all that stuff just scraping right out of there. Lots and lots of aluminum in the bottom end of this motor. Crank slides right out. Now the crank bearing races do stay on the crank. I'm not replacing the bearings, just cleaning everything up. Bottom end's actually in really good shape. So she's just going to get a cleaning. Pull all the gears out. Make sure the cases are all spotless before everything gets put back together. Make sure all the gears are in one piece. Nothing's in the way. There is a little bit of wear on one of the shift forks. Nothing major, nothing to really be concerned about. I've seen a lot worse. And here is the carnage from the motor. Lots of aluminum dust, some aluminum chunks, and the piston slug. That is the hole that's in the top of the piston. The cases are all cleaned up. Got to clean up the gasket surfaces. These do not have gaskets like a lot of the motors do. They don't use gaskets for the cases. They just use, well, I use Yamabond. A lot of it wipes right off. Some brake clean and a rag. Get the vast majority off. Now go over it with a little green scrubby. Get the rest of it off. Spray it down, clean it up. Transmission back in, crank back in. Goop up the cases. No, I did not show the process of how to put the transmission back in. It's just a fight. You put the gears in, put the forks in, put the drum in, fight with it. Like I said, 5 hours on this build. I had to cut quite a bit out of it. Lots of high speed though. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps out. Go ahead and hit the like button if this helps you out a lot. I mean, it's a pretty detailed video on how to rip one of these motors down, how to put it back together. These KTM 505 SX motors are pretty cool. The 450 is pretty much the exact same thing with a different crank and piston and cylinder. Basically a big bore. I really do like how they're driving the cams on these though. Just dropping them in, not having to worry about screwing around with the cam chain is so much nicer than what the Japanese have done. So we'll reinstall the oil pump gears. Actually, the oil pumps. Not quite sure why they did 3, but it is what it is. Some engineer was having a real bad day or something. I don't know. Make sure everything's all lined up. Make sure the O-rings are all good. Zip it all back together. There's a flat spot on this inner gear. You need to get it lined up. Get everything on there. Those gears also, both side cranks have flat spots on the gears. You need to line everything up. Make sure it's all square before you put it in. You can't just force it together. It only goes together one way. Set the pickup coil in place. Flywheel back on. Shifter. All the gears. Reassembly is pretty much just the opposite of disassembly. You got this full video that you can stop and rewind. You get lost. Don't forget the eclipse. Get the basket all back on there. Use the clutch plates to hold everything solid so you can get the nut on. Don't need a clutch basket holder. The clutch plates will hold the baskets together so that they don't spin. Don't forget the shift rod and the bearing. I almost did. The washer sits in. The 3 little tabs fit on the wings that are inside the clutch hub. Crank it all down. Bend the tab over. Make sure it's bent over far enough where it does not catch a clutch spring. This time we don't have any sticky clutch springs. Everything goes back together the way it's supposed to. Crank these things down in a crisscross pattern halfway and then zip them all the way down. Do not put a lot of torque on them. They will break the ears off. Basically, I just give it, as you see, bottoms out, twist the basket a little bit, and that's all. Turn around, throw the lower gear back in. Put the stop pin in place. You can put the front chain buffer guide on. I don't recommend putting the rear chain guide on unless you're putting the piston pin through the other side. I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing when I put the piston clip on, and I put the clip on the wrong side, so of course all this stuff got in my way. There is no base gasket on these. There's 2 O-rings. The cylinder slides down inside the cases. The 2 upper and lower O-rings are what seal the bottom and top end. Really convenient, really nice, but it is a pain in the butt to get that lower O-ring in place. The upper one, not so bad. Get Tony's finger in there, give me a little extra hand. Got the piston on there, everything's all set. Slide. Give her a little tap, make sure everything sits down. That bottom O-ring kind of stops it from going down all the way, so you got to kind of give it a little persuasion. Slide the head on, pull the chain up, put the pin in, drop the cam gears in. Now there's holes on the cams, on the outer lobes. You line the holes up with the sides of the head. Put it all back together. And throw a comment in there. Tell me what you think of this video. If this video helped you at all, if you liked it. Motor's back in the bike. We got to tweak the timing just a little bit, get her fired up, and we'll get some ride videos for you guys. Thank you all, and have a great day.